Wasabi everybody! I'm going to show you how I turned this $300 system into an $800 gaming rig. That way if you have an old desktop, you could probably upgrade it and actually turn it into a gaming rig too. The best thing about this build is it's actually going to be sold and all the funds are going to be used towards Computers for Kids, which is a program that I started alongside Catalyst Global Youth Initiative, so that way we can get computers into kids' hands that truly need it. Catalyst is a community mentorship program to inspire kids to achieve greatness. Last year I started Computers for Kids, so what the goal is to find computers that are older or damaged, like laptops with broken screens or just old systems that nobody really wants to use anymore and are willing to donate it. Last year I was able to fix up 6 laptops and 1 desktop for about $400, so with $800 I should be able to fix up and donate double the amount of computers that I did last year. The system I ended up working with is going to be the Acer Aspire T. It came with Windows 10, a 7th generation i3 7100 Intel Core processor, a 1TB hard drive, 8 gigs of DDR4 RAM, a DVD drive, a card reader, and integrated Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So basically nothing really to go wild for. But once I got done with it, it now looks like this. So let's get started. So when upgrading any computer, the first thing to look for is exactly what computer it is. So in this case, this computer has a sticker on the side, and what we're concerned with what's on here is going to be this model number. TC780ACKI3. So with that, we're going to go online and go ahead and look up the specs. Once we found out all the info we can on the computer, next thing to do is to get inside. Once inside, the one thing that I would recommend to do immediately is get rid of the power supply. Go ahead and unscrew the 4 screws in the back and unplug all the connectors that connect to the motherboard and any peripherals that you have. 9 times out of 10, you're going to replace that power supply, especially if you plan on using a graphics card. Once removed, it also makes it easier so that way you could see your motherboard and all the different ports and components that you can actually plug things into, so that way you can confirm the specs that you found online with the specs that are in the system. Right off the bat, what I see is we can upgrade the RAM. We can use 2 sticks of RAM rather than just 1 to give us dual channel, which is a lot better. Hidden way over here is going to be an M.2 slot. This one is actually SATA because we found that out online. So nothing too fast, but it is fast in general. And of course we have a nice Pci Express slot so we can plug in any graphics card. But the one thing that's going to upgrade this computer the most is the CPU. Underneath the cooler is an i3 7100, and based on what we found online, we can actually upgrade it with an i7 7700. And to do that, we just unscrew the cooler to take out the cooler, which then we can take out the CPU. Then you want to go ahead and clean off any thermal paste that was left behind. With that clean, we could go ahead and grab the 7700 and we could actually put it back in. Because this is an older Intel, you could go ahead and line up these cutouts on the chip with the notches on the socket. Go ahead and put back the latch and lock it back in. With that, we could go ahead and add back in some more thermal paste, line up, and reinstall the heatsink. Next thing I wanted to do was upgrade the storage, which in this case, this already has a terabyte hard disk drive, which is already perfect for a storage drive, so I'm not going to upgrade this or remove it. All I'm going to do is add in an M.2 SATA drive. You also have to have a small screw because this actually didn't come with it. To install it, find the M.2 SATA slot, insert the drive. With a slight pressure, push it down to line it up with the screw hole in the back, and screw it down. The next and easiest upgrade to do is actually install the RAM. But when ordering your RAM, make sure you buy 2 sticks of the same exact RAM, which in this case is operating at 2400 megahertz. Because I did have another stick, not from Kingston, that was 2400 megahertz, but when I installed it, it only operated at 2133. So after doing some research, I did find another stick directly from Kingston with the same speeds. Yeah, it's newer by a few years, but it actually does work. So to install the new stick, go ahead and pull the tabs open, line up the notch with the socket, and once inserted, go ahead and push down until you hear it click in. So the next thing I considered was the power supply. What you need is always going to be dictated by what kind of graphics card you want to install. because most graphic cards actually need dedicated power to them. In this case, I had an extra power supply that I could use that had all the proper cables and connectors. So you need two SATA power ports, the 24-pin power connector, as well as the 4-pin CPU power connector. With the cables you don't need, you could go ahead and gather them up, and you could usually toss them right into the top where the CD bay drives would normally be. And with that, I did leave out the PCI Express power cable for the graphics card. For the graphics card, I decided to go with a Gigabyte 1660 Super, as based on the rest of the components, this would be a perfect match. But with that, when you're selecting the graphics card, make sure you get a graphics card that can actually fit in the case. For this one, it can actually fit a long graphics card because underneath this panel, it's actually open all back here. Where normally on some of these cases, you'll have a hard drive bay stuck in the bottom here. To get it installed, make sure you go to this latching system. Usually it's different for each manufacturer. Take out as many PCI Express slots that you need, and we'll go ahead and drop in the graphics card. And this wire here, it would just make sense to go on top of the card rather than trying to force it under. And once we have it lined up and in line with the PCI Express lane down below, we can go ahead and insert it. You have a nice click. Make sure the holes are lined up here and go ahead and lock back that latch. Then lastly, we'll go ahead and get the PCI Express power and make sure that we get it plugged in. With that, the build is complete, but the last thing to consider is going to be the cooling for the graphics card. Because in this case, the entire front panel is fully sealed off. There's no access to air in the front. But the side of the case did have holes in it, which I was able to screw on a 120mm fan. So the only other fan that's in the case is this rear one, which this motherboard only has one fan connector. So to remedy this, we'll remove this, get a PMW splitter, plug in that fan, and plug this unit back in. Now we have a free PMW plug. That way, from the side of the case, we could go ahead and plug this in. And now this fan will work when it's all closed. And with all that, I was able to upgrade this $300 computer to roughly $800 now. Most everything that I just did, you should be able to do for your desktop that you have if it's older like this, and you could upgrade it yourself. If you've done something like this before, let me know the before and after specs so that way we can see what you did. So remember, if you like this video, go ahead and get subscribed and check out all my social media channels, so that way you can get notified when I start up the Computers for Kids program. And as well, you definitely want to check out my next video, because it's gonna be big.